They called him the Ghost of the Rising Sun. A pilot who flew into certain death, yet death refused to take him. On that fateful morning, as the rising sun painted the sky in blood-red hues, Hiroshi tightened his flight straps and whispered to himself, "If I die today, let it be with honor." But fate had other plans. His mission wasn't to die, it was to endure. And sometimes, surviving is the hardest thing a soldier can do. In the quiet barracks, Hiroshi listened to the speeches of his superiors, their voices echoing words of honor and destiny. Every pilot there had written a farewell letter, signed their name in blood, and accepted that their life was now an offering. Yet deep down, Hiroshi's heart whispered a question he dared not speak: can honor exist without death? He smiled for the cameras, saluted for the empire, but in that smile was fear, courage, and the desperate wish to live one more sunrise. Engines roared like thunder gods above the ocean. Hiroshi's Zero aircraft trembled beneath his hands as he took one last breath. The world slowed, every heartbeat felt like eternity. Beneath the steel calm of his face, his mind raced with memories of his mother's voice, the smell of home, the laughter of his little sister. He pushed the throttle. The world exploded into wind and flame. He wasn't just flying toward the enemy, he was flying toward his fate. The Pacific sky turned into a storm of bullets and fire. Planes fell like dying birds, painting the sea below with smoke and sorrow. Hiroshi felt his aircraft shudder as explosions rocked the air around him. He aimed for the enemy carrier, his breath steady. But then, a sudden flash, a hit to his wing, and everything spun into chaos. The radio screamed static. Gravity vanished. The horizon twisted. He closed his eyes and whispered a prayer as his plane spiraled into the ocean. Darkness. Cold water filled his lungs. Time lost meaning. When Hiroshi opened his eyes, he was floating in silence, alive, but surrounded by wreckage and the bodies of those who never resurfaced. His mind refused to understand. Why am I alive? He thought, shivering in disbelief. The waves whispered no answers, only dragging him toward the horizon. In surviving, he had defied his destiny, and that terrified him more than death ever could. He washed ashore on an uninhabited island, wounded and alone. Days blurred into nights as hunger gnawed at his body. Hiroshi built fires, caught rainwater, and whispered names of his fallen comrades into the sea breeze. Every sound reminded him of what he'd lost. Every sunrise reminded him that he was still here. To live, he realized, was no longer an act of survival, it was rebellion against the fate written for him. In the stillness, Hiroshi's mind replayed the words of his commander, "A pilot's death is his glory." But now, that glory felt like a lie carved into his skin. He imagined returning home, what would he say? That he disobeyed fate. That he lived when others did not. Shame wrestled with gratitude in his chest. Yet in the whisper of the waves, he began to find a strange peace. Perhaps his mission was never to die, but to remember those who did. Weeks later, a passing patrol ship spotted smoke rising from the island. When they pulled him aboard, the soldiers gasped. His name had been engraved on the memorial wall weeks ago. They called him a ghost, a miracle. But Hiroshi only bowed his head. He had seen too much to be proud. He wasn't a hero, he was a reminder that destiny doesn't always claim who it's meant to. Back in Japan, the war had already ended. Cities were dust, families shattered, and the rising sun no longer rose with pride. Hiroshi wandered the ruins in silence, searching for something, perhaps forgiveness, perhaps meaning. Children played near the wreckage, their laughter echoing against empty streets. For the first time, he smiled. He understood now that honor wasn't in dying for a flag, it was in living to rebuild what death had tried to erase. Years passed. Hiroshi aged quietly, a mechanic in a small coastal town. But every night, he would look at the stars and remember the friends who never came back. Survival, he realized, was its own battlefield, a constant war between memory and forgiveness. His scars no longer marked shame, but the price of second chances. Before he died, Hiroshi wrote one last letter, addressed to no one and everyone. They told us death was glory, he wrote, but I learned that living with purpose is the truest form of courage. He sealed it, left it on his desk, and closed his eyes. The next morning, the sun rose over the sea, just as it had the day he was supposed to die. Decades later, historians would find his name and call him a survivor. But to Hiroshi, survival was never victory, it was a promise. A promise to carry the memory of the fallen, and to prove that even in war's darkest hour, the human will to live can outshine death itself. The pilot who refused to die had finally found peace.